Hello, welcome to the Code of the West podcast, where I'm actually joined by another human today. This is Kylie Whiting, and she is. How would you describe yourself? Would you say you're a rodeo queen still?
Yeah, you can use that. I do all
Okay,
kinds of, my gosh, yeah, rodeo queen, um, athlete in rodeo for barrel racing, college rodeo. And then I'm a businesswoman. I love business and I work for a company called Cryptech. So, gosh, I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to who I am.
but deeply
But
rooted in the West, though.
yes, I am. I am. It's a big part of my life.
Well, so I mean, I know your family is multi generational in Idaho, from what your dad has told me. So,
hmm
I mean, did you have to make a choice to be a part of this kind of lifestyle, or was it like just kind of it just was it is what it was when you showed up?
Yeah, so, well, actually, I grew up as a military brat the first part of my life. The first 4 years of my life was moving around all over. But really, heritage speaking, I'm sixth generation Idahoan on both sides of my family. And with
Oh,
that, yeah, kind of fun. And so, with that, though, like my whole family's been here. And then my mom grew up showing and competing in equestrian sports and in Western sports. So, that was instilled into me from a young age when we'd come home to visit. And then my dad, his heritage just in Idaho, his family homesteaded and was super huge into agriculture. And they had a big ranch in Rockland, Idaho. And so that's my roots. But really, I didn't get into the Western world until we moved back home to Idaho when I was 9 years old. And that's when I got my very first horse. But my true passions and love for it stemmed from visiting home and my going to ride with my grandparents. And so, I mean, it's always been a part of my life, but I would say environmental factors never allowed us to have horses until I was a 9 year old settled back in Idaho, because the first 9 years of my life, the first four was military, and then the next five was we were in Alaska, and it's really hard to have horses up there. So,
yeah, no
yeah.
doubt. So, I mean, as far as because you know me, I'm sort of a neophyte in this whole thing. I'm learning a lot as I go, even though I grew up in Idaho. The horses and actual getting out and doing the cowboy stuff is kind of a new experience for me. So,
hmm
how far down the rabbit hole do you go with, say, like horses? Do you do training as well, or are you just riding and doing the barrel racing
hmm
thing?
Well, so I compete in college rodeo for the National Intercollegiate Rodeo Association. So I'm a barrel racer, and then I also show reining cow horse, which is a whole different world from rodeo. And reining cow horse is a show discipline, and it's in the Western industry. But with that, you have these really nice show horses. You go in, you execute a reining pattern, and then they send a cow in, and you maneuver the cow certain ways, and then a judge judges you on how well you can do those maneuvers. So I would say my training schedule in terms of like riding skill is pretty high, and with that, it's over the years I've had lessons and lots of training from other trainers that are higher up, that and I still continue to work with them. I will say you're never going to be like at a point where you're not learning something new when it comes to riding in the Western world. So yeah, you can put a number on, oh, I've been writing for 10 plus years, but every day I'm learning new things and new techniques, and even my trainer's learning new things, and he's sharing those things with me. So I would definitely say like that's kind of the routine with my training, and really the environment that I'm in is constantly learning.
So, do you think you're going to keep doing that for the rest of your life, then, pretty much?
Yes, definitely. It's a huge part of my life, and I was actually getting coffee with a friend yesterday, and she's grown up in the same thing as me, in same industry, and we were both talking about this college transition season, and I'm in school right now, and I was like, it's kind of weird, thinking about like when college rodeo will be over, and what that's going to be like, and it's like a piece of me. And so I
Hmm.
definitely think, yeah, there's going to be seasons where I'm going to be in a transitional season, and I'm going to be maybe without competitions for a few months, but overall, like it's always going to be a huge part of my life, and it'll be my lifestyle for the rest of it until I'm no longer able to physically ride. So.
Well, you bring up an interesting point because I mean, with Code of the West, I get a lot of people who are from all over the world and also obviously all over the country, who, from like a really earnest standpoint, are interested in perhaps kind of getting their feet wet in this lifestyle and in this world. So, like, how much of it do you think is an identity versus like just a way of life? You know, because I mean, you know, you can, like you said, you don't have to compete to
Hmm.
ride. Like,
Right.
and I don't think you necessarily need to be out punching cattle to necessarily be a full fledged cowboy. Although that's a mark that's kind of, I think, debated quite a bit. So from your point of view, like what does it mean to live authentically in this sort of Western space?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And as you were talking, I kind of had like a bigger thought to that. And it's like, hey, so you're living a way of life and it's your lifestyle. And if you take the concept of like, you can't, I would put it in the realm of like, you can't survive like physically you cannot survive without that lifestyle. I would say that would be the category of people that have that and it's like their true way of life lifestyle. Like they go out, rope their calves and that's how they make their living. And then for me on the other hand, I would definitely say it's more of a lifestyle that I've chosen. Like I can survive without it for sure, but would I want to? Absolutely not. And so I think when people are joining into this community, when they recognize like there is some differences within those different lifestyles and way of lives, and the authenticity part of it though is really just about like don't like being able to learn. Don't try to fake things because you want to be like, oh, I'm in this, like
Yeah.
actually be willing to learn at all times. And like that kind of goes back to what I was saying with like being in the competition world. Like I'm always learning, and it's very humbling. It's a very humbling
Yeah.
sport.
It's been really
And
humbling for
so
me too.
yeah, so for those that like want to get into it, it's never too late. I mean, you could be 50 years old and get your first horse, or 9 years old and get your first horse. It doesn't matter. It's never too late. It's an amazing lifestyle to live. And some people have to live that lifestyle to survive because that's how they make their living and that's how they feed themselves and survive wherever they're living. But I would just does that answer your question? Does that make
Yeah, I
sense?
mean, I don't think it's necessarily meant to be like there's one specific answer
Yeah.
because I mean, I think about, I mean, I think the through line to it is that there's just a certain level of personal responsibility because, you know, it's like you said, to have to ride in competitions, to show maybe you're not out doing it as your way of making a living, but you're still having to be responsible for the animal. You're still
Hmm.
training. You're still a participant in it. You're not just somebody who's kind of casually popping in or out. And to
Yeah.
me, like, I feel like people get really caught up, and I've been pretty lucky, even though I'm definitely an outsider in some ways. I mean, like, I grew up in the West, so it's not like
Yeah.
I'm, you know, some greenhorn podunk and I'm going to get run over by a cow or something. But I'm not going to pretend like I understand the inner workings and logic when I'm out, like with the linemen's at the branding or doing the
Hmm.
cattle roundup. And so, like, you know, and I do occasionally get people, you know, who want to throw a little bit of shade on Code of the West, and it's real infrequent, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
and generally just kind of like breeze over it. But I know that there's other people out there that want to be a part of this lifestyle, or at least just, you know, come see if they want to be a part of the lifestyle. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes, I don't know, like a lot of things in the world right now, there's some, like, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing, and there
Hmm.
might be, I think hunting's the same way. I think there's a lot more people that want to be into hunting but don't necessarily know the way into it, and we're not always necessarily the most welcoming crowd.
Yeah.
Uh, easy to sort of break the crust on.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And I think truly, it all meshes together in terms of like the hunting world, the outdoor industry, and the Western lifestyle. Like that's very intertwined with the same people. And I think it's almost kind of a wake up call on things that we need to like come together and really say, okay, if we have new people wanting to be a part of this, like that's what keeps this heritage alive, right? There is a plethora of agendas out there against our community, against our lifestyle, both hunting and Western lifestyle. And like the only thing that's going to help us survive with this and for our kids and generations to come is by welcoming others into it. And being more welcoming and not judgmental towards those people but at the same time, a call to new people, like don't come in as a so-called like know-it-all, like come in willing to learn and humble
Come
yourself,
correct.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think there's definitely a balance there, but in order to keep like at the end of the day, like in order to keep this heritage alive, we have to continue to educate others. So
How are you guys doing that at Cryptech?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say the biggest thing is like we have a huge legion of people that go out, and there are ambassadors, a huge group of people that help represent our company. There are touch points to other industries, and through that, a lot of those people's main initiatives are to educate. And so I think the biggest thing is just when someone comes to ask a question, like don't be afraid to educate, and also bringing out educative initiatives from our brand and pouring that into the industry and saying, okay, like for new hunters, this is how you quarter an elk or a deer when you harvest it, things like that. I think those are some initiatives that we have personally, and resources for new hunters, new outdoorsmen to go to when they're having questions. So,
I guess I probably should have you explain what Cryptech is, just in case people don't know
yeah.
who are listening. Yeah, and then you can explain your connection to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cryptech is an outdoor adventure gear apparel brand. We are mainly known for our camouflage that we make. The camouflage is tested and approved by our military, so I'm really proud of that. But we've brought that military technology into the hunting civilian market. And we are not only just hunting, but we're also fishing, lifestyle, camping, hiking, tactical, you name it. And we're also pouring out into the Western world as well. We have some agendas coming up and campaigns coming up with like Justin Boot Company. So yeah, really exciting, big umbrella of different things that we do. But overall, that's kind of the gist of Cryptech. I will say also we're very patriotic. We're Christian founded, very pro 2A. We have true values of America and like the same lifestyle that us Westerners believe in also. So my touch point to it is actually my dad was the CEO, is the CEO and the founder of Cryptech. So I'm his little right hand man now working for him, but I've grown up, watched him raise this company from the ground up, and it's really cool to be in it, immersed in it now. And I'm on his marketing team and have a say in things, not just because of my last name, but because I'm truly passionate about the brand and the industry we're in.
And so you're in your first year of school or second?
I'm actually a senior, so I graduate
Oh,
in
wow.
December with my bachelor's of business administration. I graduated high school with my associate's degree, so I'm a little bit ahead of the timeline on things. But
No
yeah,
kidding. Jeez.
yeah. So I'm excited to be done though. I'm like,
Yeah. Well, hence your conversation then about wrapping up the college competition then sooner than later.
yes, does that make sense? Because I'm a senior finishing up my last year.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, like you said, kind of part of my identity. And I'm kind of having to like let that go and say, you know what? Yes, this is a part of me and who I am, but also it doesn't define me. And if it is like taken away for a little bit, that's okay. But it's truly like the lifestyle I've chosen to live, and I won't ever give that up. But there will be
Yeah.
seasons of change through that.
Well, I mean, I'm significantly older than you, and something that I've noticed over the years is that, we get kind of locked into our identity as the things that we do. And I mean, obviously it informs a part of your identity, but, like if I weren't able to draw all of a sudden, I'd still be me. I would just have to find a
Yeah.
different way to express or I guess scratch the itch that I have that drawing does for me most of the time. But
Hmm.
I think pretty I don't know, it's like the guy who is a high school quarterback and can't get past the fact that, the best thing that ever happened was he won state. It's like, well,
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
it's not the most defining thing that ever happens in your life, but you know,
Absolutely.
it gets hard for some people.
No, that's so true. And I think through this like transition season, I've kind of realized like I need to grow and I need to stretch and get out there and then come back. Like it's kind of going to be full circle moment. And it's kind of funny. I always laugh because my dad is very similar with like his story of growing up on a ranch with his grandparents, moving cattle in the winters and in the summers, brandings, all that. And then he went to the military and then did that, fought overseas for 10 years, and then came home, started his camouflage company, and now it's full circle where he's just like eyes set on the prizes, and his prize is owning a ranch someday, and like retiring and just living like the ranch lifestyle. And it makes me laugh because I'm like, that was your roots, and like that's like if you would have never left, you would have like would you have known really like what you were missing, and would you have
Yeah.
had that desire in your heart to like really appreciate it as much? Or if you were stuck on that ranch your whole life, would you have complained every day and said, oh, I wish I was out in the world doing things? It's kind of funny, kind of full
Hmm.
circle moment. And I see that in my future of like okay, I have to put this aside. I have projects I need to work on. I have things I need to go do, and then I'm going to come back, full circle moment, get back into it, and really go hard. And my goal someday would definitely be to go in on the pro circuit and do pro rodeo, but we'll
Okay, I
see.
was going to ask what you're like. What I mean, because we've talked a little bit off camera about some of your more like business oriented goals, but so as far as personal goals, that is something that you would like to do is to try to be
Yeah.
professional.
Absolutely. Definitely pro rodeo if I found the right horse, because that's really what it is. You're a team and you
Hmm.
got to find the right teammate. And then also, of course, just pursuing reining cow horse and continuing that because that's a big love of mine as well. I'm engaged now, so rodeo queening is in the past because you can't be married when you do
Oh, I
rodeo
didn't know
queening.
that.
Yeah, so that's a big thing too, and that's also been part of this transition season of me like giving that part of my life up. But I'm content with what I accomplished. I was a national high school rodeo queen, which is a world championship title, and I've met a lot of people, and that actually stemmed my desires to create my own Western brand someday. So you mentioned business goals, and that's one of my main business goals in life. Who knows though? We'll just see what's in the books for me if I end up doing that or if I continue with Cryptech. I'm just kind of seeing where things go right now. But yeah.
Well, to go back to the rodeo thing for a second, what are I mean, for I mean, most people, even people in the Western world, don't necessarily know how much it takes to be a professional in rodeo.
Mhm.
So definitely for the layman's out there, like what are the hurdles that you're looking at in order to try to be a professional?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, like I said, is finding that partner, finding the right horse. It's expensive too. Like those athletes aren't cheap, and also that
Hmm.
like we treat them as if they are like part of our family. So like the feed, the care, the veterinarian care they get, and exercising and all the treatments you can give a horse, like that's very expensive.
Hmm.
And so my goal would to be able to like afford that all someday. But
Yeah.
also setting that aside too is the commitment. In order to like really succeed in the circuit, you have to be dedicated to be on the road. I would say 7 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year, depending on where you're at. But I mean, it's a lot of dedication, a lot of traveling on the road, and then there's hardships too. You may travel hundreds of miles to get to a rodeo and knock a barrel down in set 15 seconds, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a lot, and you have to truly be dedicated to it. So I would definitely say those are the biggest hurdles that people go over. Even like traveling, safety wise, the sport itself, you need to be skilled in it enough to know how to handle like accidents and everything like that because that things can happen. So I would definitely say those are the biggest hurdles.
Yeah, commitment sounds like I mean commitment's a big huge part of it, and I think about that in terms of the code a lot. Where I mean, because the way I talk about the code and the way I frame it's obviously rooted in the West, but it's pretty universal, I think, and as far as living and having a code of conduct to live by. And I think that one of the things that you learn growing up out here is that, like, from a really intuitive point of view, you got to suck at something for a while in order for you to get good at it.
Yeah.
And people are going to tell you. I mean, they're not going to be mean about it usually, but they're not going to sugarcoat things. And I think that there's a level of commitment that you just get out here generally, that I think maybe is a little bit lost, in these other more
Mhm.
urban environments where things kind of move a little bit faster. Like things can move fast, things can change very quickly out here, I feel. But whether you're out hunting and it's the weather or riding for that matter, but in terms of dedication and learning, like you said, being a constant student, like it's a lifetime thing. Like,
It is.
it's you're committing to a path. And I think that, that's the one thing that I always try to convey with Code of the West. It's like, yeah, go out, go after your dream, go chase it, but just know that, like, you're not going to get it right off the rip.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in our culture, like especially my generation, with just like social media and like people are so used to instant gratification nowadays. And I feel like we've all like as like humans have been conditioned to like instant gratification just because of technology and our world today. And I think that like then people have to like if you're gonna be in the Western world and if you're gonna be committed, you have to learn to like good things take lots of time.
Hmm.
And that's one thing I've learned through my careers and competing and it's a lot. It's hard, especially when your brain is fighting you on like I want to give up, but then your body is saying, nope, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep pushing. And so it's definitely,
How do you do that? How do you keep pushing when you feel like that?
yeah, I would say it's my true like love and passion for the sport, and that's what keeps me going. It keeps fueling me with like the desire and the goal that I have. I'm very goal oriented, and if I don't finish a goal, I'll beat myself up for it. So having goals is huge for me, but the true love I have and the true passion keeps me going as well. So it almost makes me wonder too that people that do give up sooner than they should, like, okay, maybe they just didn't have the true love for it. Like the people that versus people that are succeeding out there.
I had a very long conversation with my mentor last night. Mentor in comics. I've had quite a few
Mhm.
mentors across the weird career that I've had, but we got into this conversation about vocation versus a job and
Mhm.
how because a different conversation I had with somebody yesterday. We were talking about essentially if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And this person was like, "Well, I'd retire. I'd go hang out on a beach somewhere, and maybe open up a surf shop." And he asked me what I would do. I'm like, exactly what I'm doing right now. Like I would
Yeah.
just go hard. I'd go harder actually.
Mhm.
And he was like, really? And I'm like, well, I knew what I wanted to do since I was a kid. Since I was like 10 years old, I knew I wanted to make comics and I wanted to tell stories, and that was it for me. So, I've worked for other people doing that, but for me, it's like I wouldn't retire from this. Like
Yeah.
it's why I said if you cut my hand off, I'd be like disappointed, but I'd figure something out. I'd figure out a way to keep telling stories. And I think that's the difference between like, being a little bit older and having been chasing a dream since I was about your age. I'd say practically. I mean, I had it since I was a kid, like I said, but there's people who are infatuated with an idea or like a role that they want to take on. But to your point, I think you have to have that love, that
Mhm.
like deep in you kind of gut feeling that like this is what I'm supposed to do. And that's the only. I mean, I've been at the point where like the lights are getting turned off. I'm not sure how I'm going to eat, and I'm sitting there going like, this is crazy. Like I could go out and do a number of things and just make money. Why am I trying to draw comics, or why am I trying to start a Western brand and I'm not a cowboy,
Mhm.
like, but it's what I love. It's my
Yeah.
passion. And that gets you through a lot, but you have to know yourself well enough to know what it is that you want to do like that, I think.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think my dad in starting Cryptech is a really good example of that. Like his comfort zone. And I keep mentioning like you can't grow, it's like growing pains. You can't grow something huge without being uncomfortable, like going to the gym to build muscle, right? And same thing goes into business. And I think of my dad's example with his comfort bubble was the military. And through that, like he says, "Oh, I could have gone on to become a general," But I'm like, if you wouldn't have died in combat, like I think everything happens for a reason. But really,
Hmm.
like he had that true love and passion for the outdoors, and said, you know what, I need to and his family. I think the biggest reason he got out of the military was his family. So
Hmm.
and just like he missed 3 of my 4 years of life, the first 3 of my 4 years, and then the first 4 of my sister's 7 years, and so he
Wow.
realized that quickly and was like, you know what, I'm going to set aside my comfort. I'm going to get outside of my comfort zone because I love my family so much and I love the outdoors. And I'm going to create a brand that helps satisfy both of those loves. So I can be with my
Yeah.
family daily and I can be in like make my job my true passion. And I think also like there have been moments in my dad's career where I'm like I have to remind him like, Dad, this is your love, like this is your passion, and have to kind of check him like, hey, don't get down on yourself right now, or like don't get tied up in like this is work. Enjoy like the seasons of pain, enjoy the
Hmm.
obstacles, enjoy the growing pains, because that's all you can do at the end of the day when you look back and you're 80, 90 years old dying and you're like, did I enjoy the life I lived,
Yeah.
so
I mean,
it's
I thought about
cliche,
that.
but
I mean, I thought I was going to go to art school to do the comic book thing and worked my butt off to get scholarships and that kind of thing in high school. And I did get some scholarships, and they were significant, but not going to cover everything. And
mm-hmm,
I had some odd interactions with some representatives of some of these bigger schools, and I was like, I'm not going to go do what I want to do. They're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to pay a lot of money to do it. And so when I didn't go to art school, I was like, well, there goes that dream. Like in my
mm-hmm,
mind, I had to go to art school in order to be a comic book artist, and just walked away from it for 2 years, completely tried to ignore it. And then Paul, the guy I was talking to last night, I didn't know him at the time, but I mean, literally as a kid, had read his comic, a self-published comic back then, and I was
Cool.
like, I want this job. Like, I want to just get paid to come up with things and draw stuff. But he released a Batman book when I was like 20,
Mhm.
and I picked this thing up, and I could see how much he'd evolved. Like, he'd gotten better, like you said about, like, if you've chosen a vocation and a craft, you're gonna, if you don't get better over time, then you're probably doing it wrong. And
Mhm.
this Batman book was incredible. Like
Yeah.
it was just like a different person drew it, and it was like a switch got flipped in my brain, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna regret not trying this. I
Yeah.
know I'm gonna be 80, and I'm gonna be looking back, like you said a couple of times. I know in my gut that if I don't try this, I'm gonna regret this for the rest of
Yeah.
my life.
For
And I think
sure.
that's kind of the metric for people. I think if like you can have one of those moments, be like, oof, if I don't try to get to Montana, I mean, there's a guy from the Netherlands that I've been talking to, and he's like, he's been over here before, but he's just showing up in like 3 weeks. He's going into Montana. He's going to drive down south. He's going to come through Salt Lake. He's just going for it because he knows this is where he wants to be, and I respect that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, that's the story of the West. That's you
Mhm.
go and try to find where you belong.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's so cool. And like look at you now. I think it's so cool to see. I was following you when you had like I started following you when you first started Code of the West social media, that's Instagram, and you had like 2,000 followers.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to watch you like the you blow up really. Like it was
Well,
so cool.
watch
And
me
then
for 2 years
people
fumble around and then be like, oh, okay. Like, I
yeah.
think I know what I'm doing now.
And that and like super cool too for me because I had touch points into the Western industry. So people I knew from like my sports and just my connections and networking, like were starting to follow you. And I was like,
Yeah.
no way, like it's hitting people, it's hitting the industry, and so and it's still like
Yeah.
hitting people. So
Yeah.
I
It's
think
been
it's so
cool.
cool.
I mean, like, take it for what it's worth, I mean, because you got a long road ahead of you to go follow your passions and your dreams. But like, I wouldn't say I gave up on trying to find my place. It's just that you get 20 years into being an adult almost, and it's like, well, I'm going to get comfortable being uncomfortable, kind of like you're talking about with
Mhm.
your dad.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do me. And even when I started Code of the West, when I was still a Black Rifle, I like very vocally said, like, I'm going to do this the wrong way. I'm not going to try to use any of the tactics that you're supposed to use, to grow on social media. I don't want it to be toxic. I want it to be this like real, earnest thing that
Mhm.
people show up to. And it took a couple of years. Like, I actually kind of took a time off, like not long after I started working with Heritage and working with your dad and the PSE folks, where I just didn't really feel like I was living up to the code. I mean, quite
Yeah.
literally, like I was like, I'm not representing this well, and
Mhm.
I had to kind of get my head on straight, and that was part of the reason why it ended up kind of popping off eventually. But it's you gotta be in it for the long haul. And I will say, like, Code of the West is the first time that I felt like, oh, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, which is a really cool feeling because I've been chasing that my entire life.
That's amazing. And like I will say too, I admire what you've done and what you've created, and you said like it was there were times where I felt like an outsider just coming into this, but as someone who's on the inside, I think it's so cool to see people that like you that are wanting to get into it and wanting to educate more. Like I feel like you're kind of a vessel of like education for this industry.
I
And I
appreciate
just
that.
think it's so cool to watch you doing what you're doing through that. And yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, I'm pretty open about the fact that I was like a sick little, Ohio nerd kid, before my mom and I moved to Idaho. And, but like, I wanted to move to Idaho. I wanted to get out west. And I never took the opportunity to come out west for granted. It's just that my version of Boise was, mom rationing gas to determine like where we were going to go. Like, I couldn't go up to Bogus and just rent skis and learn how to ski because
yeah,
it was like, well, we've got $45 in the slush fund right now, and that's not going to be enough. And so,
yeah,
but it was fine. Mom and I had a great time, and like we would go wander when we had a little bit of extra gas money, go up to Idaho City or something. And, or like somebody at work from her, she used to work for a place called Trust Choice McMillan, which was an engineered lumber company, got bought by Weyerhaeuser, but everybody she worked with was from Boise. And so I'd just jump in someone's truck and they'd take me up, into the mountains, and I'd see a bald eagle for the first time, like, along the river. And I'd be like, what? And so it was always new and just awe-inspiring to me. And I
Mhm.
feel like I've never really lost that, because
Yeah.
you grew up in Boise, but a lot of the people that I grew up with, once I was there, just kind of like took it for granted. And I feel like that's, as I'm having conversations with people now, as I'm kind of flittering in and out as Dakota to the West, people are telling me like it's nice to have someone around that's just like a goober head, basically, that's getting excited because you just do something day in, day out. You kind of lose the romance. You stop realizing what you're doing might be significant.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love that you said like we had $45 in the was slash tank, whatever, but
Slush
you
fund, yeah.
slush fund, whatever. But we were fine. It was okay. I still and like it that's really inspiring that you said that and you're like it's kind of refreshing and I really do think that's part of the code of the West is like you don't need a ton of money. You don't have to be rich to like go be a part of it and have fun. And
Hmm.
like really the whole root of it is okay, what can we do today to like have genuine joy, to enjoy our lives, live out our purpose, and like don't not worry about money. I feel like
Hmm.
people in society nowadays get so tied up on like, oh, I need money to have fun, I need money to be secure. And yeah, I mean, yes, that's parts of those are true, but like at the end of the day, you're gonna be fine and you shouldn't like overthink it and hyper fixate on like needing to make money and spending your life in a cubicle in a little
Hmm.
desk, sitting on a chair all day to make money, making like medium wage. I don't know. I just think I
No,
guess
I'm
we're
with
like
you.
passionate about that part of things because Americans right now, like the majority of them, like sit in a cubicle and sit for 8 hours a day,
It's soul
and that makes
sucking.
me sad. Yeah, and so and like that affects our health and our joy, and it's like people have like I feel like our nation has a disease of apathy, like not being able to feel anything,
Hmm.
and really I think like in the Western world, like running around those barrels makes me feel more than anything in this world, the adrenaline I
Hmm.
get, and like the Western world, you don't have apathy. You can feel
Well,
sadness
yeah.
when you have to put a horse down. You can feel joy when you go and win that buckle. Like there's so many different feelings within it, and like that's what keeps me going, keeps me alive.
When I would say just existing out here has a
Hmm.
bit of this sort of like good on you. Like you go back to what you're saying about fun. My version of Boise was a little sketchier, like probably than yours. Like, I mean, there was a rope swing up by Banks when I was in high school, and a kid ended up getting killed on it. So you can tell how fun it was. But I mean, like, I almost drowned in it. Like, I got sucked in.
Hmm.
Basically, it's like it's right when you go up to Banks and like you go
Hmm.
right towards was it Garden Valley.
Yeah,
Um, there was a rope swing that was maybe a mile and a half up that switch of the highway,
yeah,
and you'd have to swim across the river and then scramble up a cliff, and then you take the rope up with you. And I think the rope was tied off about like 45 feet on a tree that hung over. And so when you're at the apex of the swing over the river, you're like 30, 35 feet up. Like some kid didn't let go, and that's kind of how it ended up killing
yikes.
somebody. But I mean, it was like Huck Finn. It was like if you don't die, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I got the second time I went up there and did it, I got sucked into an eddy and like just sucked down. Like I had two people came into the river to rescue me. Like it was
Mhm.
just I was like, cool,
Wow.
let's go again. Like but I think that's just kind of like you're talking about the people who willingly, I shouldn't say willingly because sometimes people make sacrifices to be in the cubicles to do what they
Hmm.
have to do to
Yeah,
to
yeah, for
to
sure.
which sucks, but it is what it is. But like I think when people come to Boise as an example, because Boise is a great example of like a place where a lot of transplants have shown up in recent
Mhm.
years. And I think people get caught up in kind of like okay, well, we can go hiking and, we can go tube on the Boise River or whatever, which is all great and did all that stuff growing up. But like that urge to explore, like that we used to
Mhm.
just go up at night on a Friday or Saturday and go over the mountain and like just kind of like see where we ended up on Highway 55. Like, it's just
Yeah.
it was just, you just went and wandered. And I think that
Mhm.
people have this sort of like linear thought process now. Kind of, maybe it's because of the social media or something, where it's like, oh, well, I can go there because I've seen it tagged on
Yeah.
Snapchat or on Instagram. And it's like, we're just like, man, if there's not a no trespassing sign and it's BLM land, we're going to just go see what's
Yeah.
there. And
Mhm.
I think that I hope that that's not being lost, because I mean, down here it's a little bit different in Utah. Certainly up in northern Idaho, it's still very much just like, do get enjoy Idaho, get out and walk around. But I think that people, as they're coming here, need to learn and realize that, like, there's a responsibility. There's a lot of things going on. I just read yesterday that they're trying to put a bunch of solar panels on BLM land, and that's for open grazing right now. And it's like, there's just so many
Mhm.
things that you don't realize that you're taken for granted when you're
Yeah.
out here. And I think that's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that all goes back into me saying, like, when there's new people that want to join this industry, like, welcome them with open arms, because we're the people that are keeping that alive, right? And like
Hmm.
sharing that with our kids and the kids to come and generations to come. And like having, like they always say, like, keep the Western heritage alive, and really that's what it's about. And even that, hunting as well, like we're seeing less and less hunters. I will say 2020 kind of twerked like a homestead movement,
Hmm.
self-serve,
The
farm
trad
to
wife
table.
thing.
Yeah, and so we've seen more hunters from that, and I'm like, oh, but come, like we welcome you. Let's teach you how to do things, so you're not doing it wrong, because we don't want
Hmm.
any like that can be dangerous. So, but I will say, like, that's how we preserve it is through welcoming people that want to be a part of that with open arms and educating, and then also like mentoring younger generations and the youth. So.
The Utes. Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. Like, in my experience too, is that, like, most of the time, these people from other places are well intentioned, but they also they do want to kind of like, they want to hang, they want to feel like they belong. And to your point though, I mean, I didn't grow up on a ranch, but I grew up being raised by a cowboy, being raised by truck drivers, and like, the last thing you want to do around anybody who's a skilled tradesman is pretend like you know something when you don't.
Yeah.
You're way better off just being like, "Hey, I know nothing.
Yeah.
Assume that I'm a child, and
Yeah.
just show me the knots, show me how to close
Mhm.
the gate, all that stuff."
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, as I do these podcasts more, I want to talk about that stuff more, because I do want people are going to show up anyways. Like,
Mhm.
they're coming now. So we may as well help them, you know, I guess, mind their manners, and like
Yeah.
fit in their version of it. But like, you know, like you said, if you don't talk to people, if you don't offer mentorship or teaching, people just learn bad habits.
Yeah. And it can backfire on us later on.
Mm-hmm.
So I
100%.
think it's super important to help others and mentor others and educate. And it's really the lifeline of our industry. So like we
Have you ever
are.
thought about that? I mean, as you're talking about sorry to cut you off, but
No, you
as you're thinking about life after college and not doing the rodeo queen thing anymore, and figuring, determining how you're going to navigate perhaps being a professional in the rodeo circuit, like, have you thought about mentoring or teaching at all?
There have been moments, like even little things local, where moms are like, "I want you to like train my daughter," and a lot of rodeo queen moms want me to like help interview, and so I take those opportunities as much as I can, as much as my schedule allows. And eventually, like there's also a lot of resources out there already. I will say, like in terms of those specific niches like rodeo queening, and so usually I direct them to those resources. Like there's other queens, past queens that have created like whole curriculums for girls that want to get into it. And so I usually just direct those people to the right resources. Not necessarily, I don't know if I have like that desire myself to like start my own mentorship, maybe someday, but I feel like it's hard because I'm so young still, and I'm like, I want to grow some wisdom,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so I feel like, yes, maybe later on. But right now I'm still learning myself, so it's hard to
Yeah.
like teach
Well,
people when I'm
aren't
learning.
we all? Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
okay, so there's two questions that I kind of want to start asking everybody, because I want to see
Mhm.
how the answers sort of perhaps overlap with them, amongst everybody. So the first of the two is, someone's starting from scratch. They're not from the West, or they're from a different country, but let's just say we know they're earnest. We know that they're in it for the right reasons. What do you think is the best way to approach being a part of the Western lifestyle?
Hmm. That's a good one. I think it depends too on their network and like who their touch points are. It's not about, people always say it's like not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that goes into that and getting into something else. So not being afraid to ask questions, and if you know, if you have a specific touch point to someone you know is in the industry or touching it, I think that would be the first step, is just like asking and getting to know people, introducing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
reaching out to even the Code of West online and on your social media, and
Yeah.
using that as a like different platforms like that, I think are good ways to get into it. So yeah, utilizing your resources, whether it be people, social media platforms, or different like clinics. There's all kinds of like rodeo clinics out there if someone wants to get into rodeo specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be the best. There's also jobs, like people are always hiring wranglers for ranch, like ranch wranglers, to like help take care of the horses, and that's a really great way to like get into it and start and being around the horses at first. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there's always mentors on those ranches that can help. So yeah, I would say there's all kinds, just utilizing resources that you have, or looking for resources that are touch points.
I agree. I mean, I think that's very much a fixture of the West as well. The ability to just talk to people
Hmm.
and ask questions. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times, just now, because I'm kind of turning into the old man a little bit, where it's just like I just talk to everybody, like
Yeah.
but I talk to everybody the same way. Doesn't matter what I perceive them to be or their station in life, and you can learn from anybody. Um, and so to me, I think, like, I agree with you. I think, but it's almost cultivating the skill to just talk to people.
Yeah.
And because I mean, I think social media, ironically, makes it way easier to connect to people, but
Hmm.
you've lost, or a lot of us have lost, or never even had it. If you missed out on a world before social media, you behave differently when
For sure.
when I encounter people or talk to people online. I do it the same way I used to do it when I was a kid. I just introduce myself. I try to make it kind of condensed a little bit so I'm not just wasting someone's time, and I just talk. And
Hmm.
that's how I've gotten this far in my life and my career. And I think that people maybe overthink it a little bit. They can just be normal humans and just start talking to people online and
Yeah.
go from there.
That for sure, and like not being afraid, like a lot of people are like intimidated or afraid to ask questions.
Live
But
with
I think
courage.
at the end, yeah, like at the end of the day, just people need to, step out. And I guarantee you, like this community, that's what I love so much about being in it, is the camaraderie. And yeah, there can be moments where people are like, get out, like, but the camaraderie in itself is a big reason why I am in it and I do what I do,
Hmm.
is because I love the people and I know their hearts, and I know their hearts would do the same for someone that was from Australia that wanted to come to the west of the United States.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just finding people, networking, and not being afraid. So,
I agree. Okay, the
mhm.
other question: do you live by a code?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like I do. I would definitely say hard work was instilled into me from a young age, both sides of my parents. My dad came from nothing. Like he thought he was made it big when their family moved from a single wide trailer to a double wide trailer
I
in
feel
this.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like he's create something out of nothing, and those roots have been instilled into me, that hard work. And I would just say like my work, if it's not my best work, it's no good work at all. It's a putting my
Hmm.
best work forward is another code I would say I live through. And just like that all goes into like the sport I play as well, and rodeo, and like it's hard work to train and practice. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I'm also very like in tune with my faith, and I'm a Christian, and I would say that also plays a big role into my life. So that's definitely a big part of my code as well, is just my faith.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part out here too. I think just in
Yeah.
general is just, even the people that I know that are more agnostic still, it's hard not to be spiritual when
Yeah.
you're out here, and especially when you're like literally out here, when you're working
Yeah.
out in the mountains and you're out in the desert. And I mean, I've taken people from New York. out. Well, hell, even just in Boise. This is Boise, 15 years ago. Like, but I
Mhm.
had a friend from Manhattan that came, and I took him out on old Warm Springs, like when Ben's
Mhm.
prison was still there
Yeah.
before they wiped everything out, and there was barely any light pollution out there, and you can't see stars in Manhattan. Like,
Mhm.
you might be able to see one little star, and you would have thought that we were in the middle of the Nevada desert in the way he was looking up at the sky. Like, he felt like he
Yeah.
was going to fall off.
Mhm.
So there's these, I understand how someone 10,000 years ago looked up at the sky and, and was like, oh, there's definitely something else there. Or like, I was on the back of Table Rock one time when a storm blew in, and like, I mean, the lightning was hitting so close that like it was lightning thunder, lightning thunder. There was no
Mhm.
gap. Hair was standing up on my arms, and it's like, okay, like, when you're out here, you understand why there is a bigger power, like why
Yes. Yeah.
like, it is hard to ignore, but it's easy to
No.
ignore in a
Yeah.
city because you're in a
Right.
system
It's all
made by
man-made.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that, and I would just say, like, being around horses and the sport itself, and like, there have been moments when there are probably moments I should be dead,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh
Like, there
yeah,
have been
welcome to
moments
the
like
West. Yeah, I
I
think we
should
should all be
not
able to say
still be
that.
alive right now.
Yeah.
Like, I've done some things, like, just on the horses and stuff, and there's been a lot of protection over me through that, and I just give credit to God for that, but also, like, being with horses and looking around at nature and us as humans, like, you can't tell me that just because of one little microbe. I believe God is science, but you can't tell me just
Hmm.
because of one little, like, how are we here? That's what answers the question, is because of God. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way that we're just here because we're like a snap of the finger, Big Bang Theory.
I
I don't
feel
know.
like
That's
you're living
my,
inside of that question when you're out here.
yeah,
You're just like, how is this even possible?
yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just awe-inspiring, and that's something that, you know, I haven't quite figured out how to showcase in Code of the West, because I mean, it's like riding a motorcycle or riding a horse, I can say now, where it's like you just either know what that's like or you don't. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
like a way to describe it, but I hope to, like, at least inspire people to come and want to experience it or see it
Yeah.
themselves and kind of understand it. Because I mean, because I've worked with so many people in so many different industries, and there's lots of people who I know that have really never existed outside of the coasts. I've got a friend
Mm-hmm.
who grew up in Brooklyn. He goes to San Diego for Comic Con. There isn't really this in between space, of the entire country that he's ever really seen and
Yeah.
experienced. And me as a kid being able to just crisscross the country, every summer, for one, I've realized very quickly, like, holy cow, like, this is an amazing place. It's huge, and everybody's different, but somehow very much the same wherever I
Yeah.
go. And it's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm totally in agreement with you. I've got a
Mm-hmm.
wild card question for you, actually, though, before
Okay.
we wrap things up. Um,
Let's hear it.
okay, so there's a young lady who follows me, who is, very, very much into the West, and also very much getting into marketing. And Kinsey is her name. She actually also recommended me that I read the book The Searchers as opposed to just watch the movie, and she was right. The book was amazing. But she and I have been talking a little bit about, kind of her career. I mean, she's young; she's a couple years younger than you are, but she's really wanting to get into marketing, and that's like the passion that she's following. And she even kind of started her own version of Code of the West a little bit around the same time that I did initially a few years ago. So, do you have any advice for someone that might be a little bit younger than you or about your same age that's trying to navigate social media in an earnest way?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I just keep going back to, like, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. Like, putting yourself out there to people that maybe, like, I think it's cool. Like, I can already tell she's already doing this because she's talking to you.
Mhm.
She's obviously putting herself out there to, like, ask people, get mentorship. But if there's even like a brand that she's like super passionate about, that she loves and looks up to, like, reach out to them, see if they're doing an internship or if they're hiring. Because I think the biggest thing for me, the best way I've learned of like what marketing is, and I'm in school, I'm in business school, but like, honestly, I will say, set that all aside. I've really learned it because I'm immersed in it right now in a business. And so my biggest tip for her would be find a brand she really loves, that she's passionate about, that she looks up to, that maybe she like uses as an inspiration of like, oh, I want my brand to be this big someday. Go see if they have an internship or if they're even hiring part-time, and
Mm-hmm.
just go learn, like being a vessel and a sponge and learning. And then also like through that, take advantage of the people you're meeting in that business, and sit down and be like, what would you recommend me to do? Like, what is your biggest pieces of advice? I went to WESA, Western Equestrian Sales Association in Dallas a few weeks ago, and I literally sat down with like big dog CEOs of these big Western brands and asked them like, what would you recommend? And like the most common, like, what's your biggest piece of advice? The most common thing was just like, don't be afraid. One, don't be afraid to ask questions, and two, like, network, utilize your resources. It's about who you know, and then immerse yourself in the industry in itself and
Mm-hmm.
in the business. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Um,
I
and
agree.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would add to it, I was trying to tell her, like, go ahead and just do your code of the West. Like,
yeah, yeah.
like, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's similar. I mean, like, I'm not the only
Hmm.
person that is trying to tell stories like this. Is like, copy
Yeah.
what what I'm doing. I mean, that, like,
Hmm.
it just fail quickly. Not that she'd
Yeah.
fail. Just like, just go for it.
Learn.
Because
She'll
yeah,
learn from that, and then you take your brand, you say, hey, and you go to bigger brands and you say, this is what I'm doing, or like mentors in the bigger brands, finding people, networking. You say, I'm doing this, what would you recommend for me? And some people may be nice, some people may not. You just
yeah.
gotta take what you can, through those combos.
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of like before Code of the West blew up, I was doing exactly what you're saying. Like, I was asking a
Mhm.
lot of questions. I'd find someone who was kind of doing something kind of like what I wanted to do, but
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to have to be the one to kind of put it together in the way that I ended up figuring it out how to put it together. But some people were willing to talk, and then some people just, it's kind of like almost like a trade secret,
Mhm.
like I used to do sleight of hand magic because I'm super cool that way. And
Yeah.
like, some magicians don't like sharing their techniques because they've figured
Mhm.
out certain tricks, and that's kind of like their calling card. And I understand that, like, to some degree. But
Yeah.
to your point about hunting and Western lifestyle, though, if you don't teach somebody how to do that trick, the thing is lost to time.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
so you got to kind of have that balance where it's like, okay, yeah, that's you, but do you want a legacy? Do you want this to be
Mhm.
something that exists past you? And I think that's kind of that balance. But yeah, to your point, like, I think most people are willing to talk,
Yeah.
and share what they know.
Especially to someone who's younger.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like if she's a few years younger than me and she's pretty young, like if she's motivated enough, she'll reach out and they'll see that. And like honestly at the end of the day, yeah, just take what you can, but don't take it personally if they're saying no, sorry, I can't help you. Like you just
What
have to
do you
move on to the
follow?
next.
Do you follow Broken Bow Country at all?
I don't. Broken Bow Country.
Yeah, it's like a curation account, as best way I can put it. Like, it's a lot of stuff of like Waylon Jennings and
Mm,
like kind of outlaw country music
cool.
stars. But I'll say it this way for a second. The guy who runs it does like sketches and drawings and puts them on T-shirts. The account's at like over 700,000 now. It's an
Mm.
18-year-old guy that started this thing.
Wow.
Like,
That's
and I've
amazing.
started talking to him a little bit just to kind of be like, hey, like, it's got to be pretty weird and lonely to be in high school and writing college essays and doing this. But I get what I'm getting at is that, like, it's really cool to see people in your age bracket getting
Mhm.
after it. Because like,
Yeah.
when I was 20, there was still very much this like pressure that, like, if you didn't go to school, there was no chance in
Yeah.
hell that you were going to succeed doing something, out in the world. And I think in that 20-year gap since I got out of high school, the internet has become way more of a resource. And I mean, obviously, just for information, but it facilitates things like Code of the
Mhm.
West. To be honest, I wouldn't be able to build it the way that I have 20 years ago. Like, it
Right.
wouldn't have happened. So like, I think it's really cool and inspiring to see people who are 18, 19, 20 just getting after it,
Mhm.
and because people, I think every generation always says like, oh, these young people these days, blah 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 blah, and it's like, man, I don't, for one, I don't really believe that, but I definitely believe like your generation is really exciting. I mean, I'm sure you can
Yeah.
say there's like, every generation is going to have the flip side. But those of you who are going hard in the paint are going hard in the paint.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think there was kind of a movement of like boss girl, hard work during COVID. Like everyone kind of went to social media and was like, work hard, like we're here to work. And I think we've also like I think the millennial generation above us
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
kind of reputation of like the millennial reputation where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, they're kind of lazy. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say every millennial I've ever met, but that's kind
No,
of
but I would agree with the bulk of
we've
that
learned.
statement.
We've learned from them though. Like we've learned
Hmm.
their mistakes and we're like, no, like we're here to work. And that's kind of what I said about my code of the like my personal code I live by is like my hard work. And I'm willing to work for anything. And that was instilled into me from my parents. But I think a lot of younger people my age are also realizing that like we need it in order to survive, like you gotta work hard. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's because when I started Code of the West, I think a lot of people thought like, oh, whoa, yeah, Yellowstone's popular, so that's going to go away. It's like, I'm not starting it because of Yellowstone. Like,
yeah.
uh, it's, it's not a bad thing, but
Hmm.
Yellowstone, I mean, I know it's coming back, but like, I feel like that moment has passed in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But not that it's going to be a bad show or anything when it comes back, but more to your point though, that I think my intuition was I think more people do agree with this idea of hard work and getting things done and just being kind to each other and being good to
Hmm.
each other.
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes sense to me that your generation kind of like almost is rebelling in a way, because like we as elder millennials, I saw Instagram and Facebook. Hell, I was on Facebook when you could only have a university email to get on.
Yeah.
So to us, we were like, this is interesting. We're just
Mhm.
they were it was always like getting a new hammer. It's like maybe this will drive a nail faster. That was about what it was to us. And then I think over time we just kind of got inoculated to it. It just became kind of like the fabric of how we lived our lives. Whereas I feel like even though you grew up kind of with it, I think you guys have more of an awareness of what the dangers are of it now. Like
Yes, a hundred percent.
you're more aware how it can manipulate you than we are.
Yeah, 100% that, and even like within like how when it comes to parenting, like how I'm going to parent my kids with technology versus how you see millennials parenting their kids. I'm even learning from that. Like you hear the iPad kid
Hmm.
like problems, and like millennials just hand their kids their like iPads, and they're like don't even have any social skills. And I'm learning a lot of things from that as well. So we could get
Hmm.
in. I could talk all day about that, but it's 100% something that our generation is learning and we recognize it and we're like nope, we're not gonna do that. So
Well, do you have a few more minutes before we get off, or you
yeah.
okay on? Okay,
Yeah.
since we're talking about it, I didn't know this until I went to my first branding and met the Lymans, but I kind of always assumed that like good example of what I'm trying to about to say is like when I think about putting music with a real Code of the West. 2 years ago, I would have thought that it had to be like Garth Brooks or Marty Robbins or something.
Hmm.
When I was out at the branding, everybody's listening to like DMX and like weird pop music
Yeah.
and like and so I was and they were everybody was asking me questions because I was still figuring out a lot of things, more things than I am now with Code of the West, social media wise. And so we were doing a knowledge swap in that first branding
Hmm.
where I was like saying, here's how you can record better and get better audio. And they were like, well, here's how you can hold down a calf and not get kicked in the face. And and I realized that social media actually for like your generation of Western, let's say agricultural families, like producers and that kind of thing, it's actually a thing. It's actually they're trying to figure it out and they're trying to use it. So the question I guess I want to pose to you is where do you see the benefit of social media in the Western community outside of just like there's a lot of people that do the influencer thing that it's like, hey, I'm in front of my horse or whatever, which is fine, like, but in terms of helping that
Hmm.
growth and that education that we're talking about, how do you see social media playing a part in that as time
Yeah.
moves forward?
Oh, I think it's like one of the biggest parts of like moving forward in our in the times years to come. Like how are we going to preserve this lifestyle through social media and showing and educating others? You brought up Yellowstone, and I think Yellowstone was definitely a pivotal moment in the industry
And
because
you were
it
on it, weren't you, or
I
something like
was,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I was. And that was cool seeing like gosh, you mix entertainment industry with the Western industry, that was like hard work.
Hmm.
Hard work. I was like, holy cow. Like, yes, acting in the entertainment world is hard, but then you bring in a bunch of calves. Like, the
Oh
majority
yeah,
of my work day was pushing cattle that wasn't even being filmed. Like, we were actually moving cattle.
literally pushing cattle. Yeah.
Yes. So, but I mean, in terms of like Yellowstone, that has created a whole like Western is cool everywhere, including Europe, like all the way across the world. It has created this entire new idea of like what the Western world is. But through that, I think also social media is a really powerful tool, and it can be good in terms of educating others. It can be really, really good for those that have their own ranches and like their own agriculture so they can spread their business from
Hmm.
a business perspective. It can be great for brands like Code of the West if they have business and they're trying to spread. So there's all kinds of benefits to that. But I also say like the camaraderie is the biggest thing. And I'm sure you understand that based off your Code of the West following and the camaraderie you have in the comments. But
Well,
like you go
and being able to
to,
get out now and meet people, like, I
yeah.
mean, as much as I would like, but I went to the pro am in Ogden a couple weekends. I guess it was last weekend, the roping
Mhm.
pro am, and like it was the first time that somebody came up and was like, "Are you Code of the West?" And I was like,
Wow.
"Whoa,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
that's weird."
Yeah. I mean, it creates like conversation. I would say like rodeo is one of the only sports in the world where you have competitors helping competitors. So like the
Hmm.
roughies in the back getting their rigging strapped on the bulls, like or the broncs, sorry, and their bull rope strapped on the bulls. Like that's their competitors are doing that for them,
Hmm.
and like they're cheering them on. You know, it's such
Hmm.
a tight knit community and a camaraderie sport, and that's what I truly love about the social media aspect of things is because you can share that and you can experience that just with the click of your phone. So
Hmm. Very cool. Well, as we're wrapping up, is there anything that you just want to throw out there? I mean, like, knowing kind of the context for Code of the West, like, it doesn't have to be anything that we talked about. Is there just something that you generally feel like is kind of glossed over in the Western community?
say one of the other biggest challenges that like the Western world is facing today is like the woke agendas against us, and with that, like PETA, shark. A lot of people may not know, but like PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, ironically is very anti-rodeo, and so the biggest thing that I like am very passionate about is educating other people, especially that aren't in the industry, on animal welfare versus animal rights. Like animal rights is humanizing animals and saying no, they shouldn't even be touched by animals, but little do they know those animals can't survive on their own and they need
They're
versus
domesticated.
animal welfare. Yeah, and then through that, like we go into bloodlines and how animals are bred. Like most stock contractors have breeding systems that are genetically like the animals are bred genetically for rodeos, and like we talk about purpose, well those animals have purpose, and that purpose is through rodeos, and like that's only a percentage of their life, and then the rest of their life they're on green pastures eating
Hmm.
tons of food, you know. And
Like
so
JB Mooney, like with
yeah,
the bull
he
that
bought
broke
his
his back.
bull.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's the biggest thing. I'm so passionate about that, and just the animal welfare that goes into those animals in this sport, because it's we're under attack constantly by
Hmm.
PETA and Shark and other groups. They think rodeo is cruel, and it makes me furious because I'm like, no, it's actually cruel to like neglect that animal in the BLM and it die of starvation or die of thirst and dehydration
Hmm.
from not having enough water. Like those animals do not have the resources like they did 100 years ago to survive
No,
on their own. Like they
no.
need
I mean,
humans.
the same people that are against it are the same people that are okay with putting fields of solar panels in
Yeah.
BLM land.
Hmm.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, I think that's the biggest thing. Was it, there's a couple accounts that I follow, like US1, I think is
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
And where it's like, it's just, I think there's a cognitive dissonance, especially having spent a lot of time living in places like Manhattan. People are usually operating off of very limited information. And not that that's an excuse, but it's more of like an opportunity, I think, because it's like
Hmm.
when presented with information that's rational and or experience, most people are like, oh, okay. I mean, even like I had friends that didn't like guns, and I was like, okay, well, just go shooting with me one time, like, and I'll just, and I'm very, very much like a very safety oriented, like not
Mhm.
sexy,
Good.
like we're going to spend 20 minutes talking about this before I even like let you touch
Yeah.
an empty
Good.
gun. Um, and I've never had an experience where the person's not like, I want to do that again,
Yeah.
but you have to have that patience to talk to somebody that you don't necessarily agree with, and show them, show not tell, I think is pretty key. And
Yes. Yeah.
that's where I think social media can really come into play,
Mhm.
is is that showing part of it. And that's kind of what I try to stay pretty neutral with Code of the West, just because not that I don't have strong opinions or stances on things. It's just that, like, I think that it's best for people to draw their own conclusions when they see something, because
Absolutely.
we're inundated with people telling us things all the time,
Yeah.
and they're often
Absolutely.
contradicting something else, another source of information. But it's a lot, I think, a lot more authentic and trustworthy when you can just be like, here it is, it's unedited,
Mhm.
just it's happening. You can draw
Yeah.
your own conclusion. I might disagree with you, or you might disagree with me, but at least you understand what you're disagreeing about.
Right. 100%. Yeah, that's so good. I 100% agree. And then also, like, your platform is a vessel for to educate others, and sometimes having those strong harsh opinions isn't the most welcoming way to bring someone that may not agree. All he might just, it might turn him away right away, so you have to kind of have that neutral stance to bring him in, and then show them, like, okay, wait, like, this is what it is,
Yeah. And it's kind of, I mean, like I was talking to Paul about this last night, 'cause it's like certain things are non-negotiable. Like,
Mhm.
I'm very pro-American, very pro-liberty,
Yeah.
but you can do that and not, like, your dad, and the video that he made, like, I wish I could make a video like that, but
Yeah.
in my mind I'm like, no, I think I'm gonna let it ride the way that it is, because I'm in this really weird and unique space where um I can kind of like let people come and go as they please, and I'm not trying to, Cryptech is a business, like I'd say
Mhm.
Code of the West is business like, like I don't quite know what the model is for it yet, other than I tell stories and I show
Yeah.
stories. And so there's I'm kind of that mind that, not that I'm a journalist, but I love journalism from like the mid 20th century, where it's like, I'm just here to report, I'm just here to kind
Mhm.
of like show you some stuff, and might kind of color it a little bit, but for the most part, like, here's what it is. You kind of make your own decision. um Now, in my personal life, I have conversations with people, and I don't have any problem telling them, where I stand on things. But even then, I'm friends with a bunch of people who think differently than me. I have a lot of friends who are extremely liberal, and we'll have those conversations. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's fine. Like, I'm not like threatening their family or trying to burn down their house or vice versa. Like, but I think that's the benefit of having a conversation with somebody in person. I don't
100%.
think social media really, it optimizes for something different. And I think that's
Yeah.
one thing it's one thing I haven't figured out how to do with Code of the West yet. But I have this like goal that I want to just sort of like red pill everybody, like, so that they understand that, like, yeah, social media is an amazing tool, but you can get sucked into it and completely subverted by it, even by entities and people you agree with,
Yeah,
and without
100%.
realizing it.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%.
Well, on that delightfully light note, I think we'll wrap it up. But I really
Okay.
appreciate you taking the time, and this is the first time I've had someone that isn't like, just like a Black Rifle employee or something. Like this, you're like my first actual guest, so I really appreciate you taking the time and doing this with me.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be on, and I'm excited for you and excited to watch you keep growing, and I'm cheering you on. I'm
Likewise,
excited. Thanks.
likewise. Oh, and also thanks for the advice and the hats.
Oh, I'm so
Kylie
excited.
Kylie basically told me that my hats were crap, like a week ago. No, I'm getting the samples are coming in a couple of days, but no, you definitely inspired me to kind of take a whole different tack on things, and it was fun to. I had to learn a couple new skills, and in the process to do it. But no, I really appreciated that, like that
Good.
advice.
Good. I'm so excited to see them, and I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
they'll do
don't
well.
yeah. Well, don't get your hopes up. Everybody's really reacting very well to the "she dooley thick" concept right now, which is just absurd and ridiculous to me. Um, but we'll see how it goes. But no, I really appreciate it. And once you hang out with me for a second, while we wrap this
Yeah.
up.